As the communication profession becomes more and more disrupted by AI, there's still a critical part of our jobs that these tools cannot take away. And that's our ability to put humans at the very center of our thinking, our advice, and our strategy. Which is why I wanted to welcome Singapore-based communications professional Lisa Partridge back to the show. Lisa is a learning designer, facilitator, and communication skills specialist originally from the UK. She founded SixComms in 2021 after 11 years at the British Council Professional Development Centre. And she now supports professionals and teams in communicating effectively through her 6Cs framework, which you're going to hear much more about in this episode. Lisa hosts the SixComms podcast with 80 episodes featuring international guests and practical strategies to help listeners elevate their communication skills. She also leads monthly walk and talk sessions in Singapore's nature parks, where professionals explore ideas, build deeper connections, and engage in meaningful conversations. And you can go back and listen to the original episode we recorded with Lisa, where she talks through all of that walking and talking and how that helps with communication. But in this episode, we are diving into the heart of what makes communication truly effective, and we explore Lisa's 6Cs framework. Lisa helps us to bust some of the most persistent myths in the workplace, including the dangerous assumption that simply sending the message means communication has actually occurred. She also challenges the more is better mentality, arguing that our current noisy digital landscape means that less is often more. Whether you are a leader trying to cut through the noise or a professional looking to build deeper trust within your team, this episode is going to give you the building blocks to transform how you show up as a communicator. So without further ado, here's Lisa. Lisa Partridge, welcome back to Less Chatter, More Matter.
Hello, lovely to be back.
Yes, it's been a while. So for our listeners who haven't heard of you before, that maybe haven't listened to your last episode with us, who are you? What do you do? How did you come to develop your expertise in this space?
So I'm Lisa Partridge. I'm the founder of SixComms. I started the business 5 years ago. I'm based in Singapore. My background, I started off as an English language teacher and travelled the world doing that. And then had a business in London. And then 16 years ago, I found myself in Singapore because of my husband's job. And ended up going into corporate training. So doing lots and lots of workshops across industries and sectors, primarily with Singapore Airlines and Marina Bay Sands and many different government agencies. And then COVID hit. I had a change of heart. I wanted to get out of organisation and I decided I wanted to start my own business. And so I did. 5 years ago, I took the leap.
Yeah, it's so exciting. So our businesses are about the same age, actually. We had our 5th birthday last October. It was. So I think COVID maybe has inspired a bit of change for everybody that we think we're coming. And I'm very okay with it. So today we're going to talk about your 6Cs framework, because I think it's a really great way to talk about what makes communication effective. But before we get to that, I'm interested to know your opinion. What are some of the common myths that you hear about communication, especially when it comes to internal comms?
Okay, so a bit of a disclaimer, first of all, Mel. I actually cheated a little bit with this. And I used the old ChatGPT because I was just curious about what they thought. And so I just typed in what are the top 3 myths about comms, especially internal comms. And actually, I agree with them. And this has been my experience personally and what I've heard. So number 1, if you've sent the message, communication has happened. That's the assumption. Okay, so I've sent the email, I've done my job, and everybody understands, but there's no checking of understanding. So it might
do what I say now.
Yeah, exactly. And the action was clear, and I'm going to expect an email within 2 days with everything that I've asked for. And of course, that isn't how communication works. If only it did, our life would be so much easier. Number 2, more communication is better communication. So if I've if I've communicated across my WhatsApp, my Slack, my email, I've said it in a town hall, I've said it in a webinar, I've said it in the team meeting, all of that is going to help, and my message is going to be clearer. And as a result, action is going to be taken. We live in a very noisy world, so just adding to that noise doesn't really help. So yeah, second myth, more communication is better communication. Absolutely not. I'm very much of less is more, especially now. And then the third one, communication is HR or the communication department's job only. But we know for sure that it lives in day-to-day conversations, and it's not just through those what is deemed the official channels. So yeah, I thought ChatGPT was quite accurate.
Great. And look, I'm sure there's probably lots of our listeners just sitting here nodding away going, oh my God, yes. I mean, a couple of things there. The more communication is better communication. I hear that a lot. People have been told, oh, just keep communicating. There's no such thing as over communication. Like, yes, there is. People are getting hundreds of emails a day, hundreds of messages, and you're just adding to it. Like, how is that better?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, totally agree with that one. And what was your third one there? It was around
communication is HR or the comms job only.
It's like everything that sends a message is a form of communication. So if you're a leader and you're not turning up on time to meetings, or you're constantly cancelling your one-on-ones with your staff, or, the values of the company say one thing and you've put them out in your email dutifully and then you're doing something else, that sends a message, like, oh, yes, okay, we could preach about this forever. And I want to get to some of the ways that we counteract some of those myths, but we'll cover that, I think, in your framework. But the next question I have is, I'm sure you and our listeners have seen plenty of engagement surveys in our time. And oftentimes what we see in these surveys is a question like, communication in our organization is effective. And then you get the response that it's not effective. Well, and that's when you hear things like, we need to communicate more. It's like, no, okay. What do you think people are thinking of when they answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, I always think it's good to start with yourself. So like reflecting on your own experience. So what do I feel is important when I think about effective communication, when I've been asked those questions previously when I worked in organizations. So my starting point was there, but I think over the years, I've heard this from so many people, like ex-colleagues and people that I work with. So, and I've kind of done it in a bit of a like posing questions to myself. So like my first question that straight away popped into my mind, and what the 6 C's framework is really fundamentally based on, is, have I really felt listened to in all of my day-to-day interactions? Whether that be with my colleagues, whether that be with my manager or my leader, have I really felt heard and understood? So that's the first one. The second one, am I clear and connected to the overall purpose? And how does my role fit into that? And what am I expected to do? And where are the boundaries within that? Like, what is my role? And what falls outside of my role? And more than that, am I clear in whose role that is within the team? And are we all kind of, rowing in the same direction? And am I even clear what direction that is?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the second thing. Yeah. Who's got the map? And who's keeping an eye on the compass? And if the compass is going wrong, is the direction going wrong? Who is steering us in the right way? And then the last one, am I able to contribute? Do I feel safe to contribute? And am I able to do that easily with the style that I have, that I'm comfortable with? And more importantly than that is, if I give them feedback at any point, whoever that might be to, have they really listened to that? And has it been acted upon if it can be? And have I seen evidence of that as a result? So those are the kind of things that I thought of personally. Yeah.
I agree, especially the listening piece. I think that is something that is really, I guess, underrated, or it's probably not quite the word I'm looking for, undervalued maybe in organizational comms. And I think also what I hear is people feel uninformed, like something happens, they didn't know about it. And the reality is they probably got tens of millions of emails about it. But of course, was it actually communicated in a way that, like you were saying, meets their needs and it helps them digest that information and is suitable for where they're at? It's not just the channel, it's the context. Like if they're in a call center and busy all day, the last thing they want to do is then go, I'm just going to go to read that internet article or those 50 emails that came in while I was serving customers. Like it's not going to happen. So find other ways. So I guess this leads us then to the guts of your work, which is your 6 C's framework. So let's talk through them. What's the first C?
So I don't think you'll be surprised at this. Connection. Connection leads the way. So, connecting beyond that role, beyond that title, beyond that position that's written down. It's about, knowing that human, and knowing them not just in the professional way, but also about their life, their needs, their priorities, what's going on in their individual context. So it's about that genuine connection with another.
And what does that look like in communication?
So it means like not just having the work conversations, having those what I call the spaces in between the formal meetings. That's where the real connection happens. It's often very spontaneous. It's very in the moment. It sometimes surprises you. You sometimes learn about somebody that you've been working with for a long time. And it's only when someone's created a different space and you're interacting in a different way that you actually find out something about them that you hadn't known before. And if we're not creating those spaces, then unfortunately that real connecting tissue doesn't really get created or develops. So yeah.
That's really important too in a world where we are doing more hybrid work than ever before, more remote work. You've got AI coming in, obviously, and filling some of the gaps in comms. But I think at the end of the day, humans we crave connection. It's part of what makes us human, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an interesting place to start. So connection, filling the spaces in between. I like that.
Yeah.
What's your next C?
Yeah. So it actually these first 3 come as a trio, and they're what I would say are the human-centered approach of communication. So starting with connection, followed by its best friend, which is curiosity. So curiosity, being encouraged and able to ask those open-ended, non-judgmental questions. And that's really what helps innovation and creativity to thrive. It's the what if, not the worst case scenario, but the what if, what's the best that we can, that can happen? Where can our imagination take us? And, as humans now in this AI-driven world, we can't underestimate the power of our own imaginations. And if we're not creating spaces where those open, non-judgmental questions are safe to ask, then we can't get to the magical innovation and the imaginative ideas that people can have and that they can contribute. So connection and curiosity, they're kind of best friends. If we don't have one, we can't have the other, and vice versa.
And that's really important too in those performance-driven or feedback conversations, right? Like being curious about the other person's mindset and why they may have done something the way they've done it, or why, all of a sudden their behavior is a bit off, or rather than going with that immediate judgment or, you've done this wrong. It's actually that curiosity. And like you say, having that connection that's built the trust foundation to be able to have those conversations, because if I don't trust you, I'm not going to open up to you. I'm not going to feel like I can be asked those curious questions too.
Yeah.
So I think they're best friends.
Yeah, the best friends, they hold on to each other. And then I suppose if you've got those right and you've really, leveraged on those and really dialed them up, then, as you say, when you've asked those questions and you know a little bit more about the context or maybe why that person isn't performing as well as they have done, then you can come in with the compassion, because now you understand the context. Oh, so that's why they haven't been performing so well. So what are the resources that I can give to you in order for you to be able to meet this performance that I'm after? What support can I give you? And maybe the team can give you in this period, in the context that you're in right now. Is it a time when perhaps we need to take some of your role away and distribute it to others? That really is a compassionate act. So it's not just having the empathy is driven from the connection and the curiosity, but the compassion, I kind of say, is empathy on steroids. It's the actually making the action happen in order for that person to perform at their best, knowing the context that they're in.
Yeah, I love that. It's, again, a reminder we're talking to humans, not robots. And humans have a lot going on. There's outside of work. And I don't know whether it's possible to really differentiate your work life from your home life, because it's always there. It's always bubbling away in the back of your mind, even when you're at work. There's other stuff going on. So I think I really like that word compassion. So they're the first three.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do we go next?
So then we go to the strategic. And so those are starting with clarity. So going back to what I said earlier about the myths, it's knowing the direction. It's knowing the why behind what we're doing. So what is the goal here? What is the outcome that I would like to achieve? So that's the clarity piece. And then that's followed closely by the customization. So we said, if we send a message, we think the communication has happened. But the customization piece is about, okay, who am I sending this message to? What is my goal? So where's the clarity piece? And so what's the best channel for that? Is the best channel an email? Or perhaps the best channel is getting people in a room, if that's possible, together in person and then sharing the message there. What type of communication styles do my individuals or my team have? What's the primary communication style so that I can best decide what channel to use? So that's the customization piece, thinking about who your audience is and then tailoring it to suit that audience. And then the sixth and final C, that's part of that strategic approach, is the consistency. So it's kind of saying, okay, this is what I want to do. This is why I want to do it. But how does what I say and maybe my non-verbals, how are they aligned so that it's consistent and that I can build trust? Because I'm sure your listeners will relate that I've been in organisations where the leader has, said something, lots and lots of good jargon words, but actually in practice on the ground, I haven't seen much evidence in terms of behaviour that backs that up. So then my trust starts to be chipped away. And that's where you're gonna have real problems.
Yeah. And like all of this, I think, comes back to trust, right? Like it's the building blocks of trust, because you can't just say to somebody, trust me, and they will. Like you can't, the organization can't just say, trust us. Like it doesn't work that way.
Sure.
Sure. Why would I do otherwise? So it's almost like these are 6 building blocks that, build that trust in different ways. And it also sort of occurred to me, and I'm sure you do these 6 C's can also act as a bit of a diagnostic in a business from an internal comms, even, culture point of view, really, to go, okay, let's ask some questions within each one of these C's and try and diagnose where it's falling short. Is that kind of how you use it?
Yeah, as a diagnostic. I've actually got a download that goes through. It's a bit of like a prompt question just for individuals to ask themselves, where may I, and I'm not I don't like, I don't think you like either, but I don't like that whole everything fits in a box and you're going to get a score and then that number is going to translate to that and it's like a perfect fit. Nothing's like that in life. So this is really about looking at those 6 Cs, asking a few insightful questions that just get you to reflect. And it might be by the end of it, you'll say, actually, in terms of the human approach, I think I've got that okay. I think I'm doing a lot of connecting. I think I'm open and curious. And I think I've got some kind of, I'm exhibiting compassion with my colleagues. Okay, that's fine. But maybe on the strategic, I'm not sure I really know how to customize those messages. Like I know my colleagues, but I'm not sure what communication channels to use and what's best. And maybe I've never asked that question in the first place. So it just gives you some prompts and it's saying maybe you need to dial up one or two of them. Maybe you're okay with some of them. Maybe some of them you've been neglecting. So I'm very much about holistic communication and also mindful communication. Just checking in with yourself now and again to see, okay, this C needs dialing up in this context. Maybe I'm okay with one of them. But if I have all 6 working together, that really offers something quite full and meaningful and can really transform how I'm working within my team, but also how I'm showing up as an individual communicator.
Yeah, it feels like there's, because obviously there's no one size fits all like we've talked about, but these 6 Cs as a diagnostic can be applied at the macro level, like the organizational level, the team level, and then the individual level.
Yeah.
So it means different things at different layers, and it might be working really well in this team over here, but in this team, maybe they'll have one of those Cs ticking the box and the rest are an amber light or a red light. Like there's issues that need to be addressed here. So it's I love this idea. Are we able to share your link to your download?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
Love that. When you go into an organization and you share these 6 Cs, what kind of response do you typically get? Are people surprised by, they think, oh, I've been doing really well, or I've been trying really hard at that, but it's not working?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. I think some people think, like, as I said, they resonate with some more than others, or they think some are okay. But even if they think some are okay, they might not be getting the results that they want. So again, I think you're also of this belief that I think also it's a bit of experimentation as well. My whole entrepreneurship journey has been just one of complete experimentation. So I think that when I speak to people, it's a great tangible way. I suppose any framework that you gives a language to some of the issues that you might have been seeing that you can't quite put into words. So when you give someone those 6 clear words to attach those issues to, then they can start unpicking and unpacking what that looks like. And then that helps. Okay. Yeah. So it's always been about strategic. So that's where I need to, spend more attention and time and energy. And when you're a busy leader and manager, you don't have excesses of time and energy. So it's nice for someone external to come in and just put maybe a little name around that. And I'm not saying, I have my views of what those 6 Cs are, but within other organizations, they might come up with something very different, of course. And then that's great because then they're starting to put language to their challenges within their context and their mission and align to their values.
Yeah. I think there's 2 things there. Like one is that, as you say, the common language that everybody can get around and understand. And whether that is your 6 Cs or they're taking them and morph them into something that's more meaningful for them, amazing. Like do what you need to do to build that understanding. But yeah, I think the other thing that springs to mind is around how we sometimes just need not experts, but just outside opinions, because we get I mean, I do it in my own business, let alone being in a corporate world where you are so busy and you're pulled in multiple directions. You've got all the baby birds that are chirping at you, like, feed me, feed me. And so it's hard to see the wood for the trees. So sometimes you just need that other person to come in, and that's all they're looking at. They've got that clear view. They're not biased, in any way in terms of, well, in that context. And to be able to just say, look, I think this might be the problem. And sometimes it's so bleedingly obvious, but you just need somebody else to point it out to you.
Yeah, and to name it, and then to work together to unpack what that is. And okay, if we've identified it, now we can start to try and address it and overcome some of those barriers.
Now, I'm a big fan of recapping things because, we have to repeat. So your 6 C's, as we've just talked through them, the first layer was the human layer or the people layer. So that was connection, curiosity, and compassion. And then the second layer was the strategic layer, which was clarity, customization, and consistency.
That is correct. Yeah, very good.
Build the trust. So one more question for you on this topic. Let's say we've got people who are brand new to comms, or they really want to sort of up their game. They want to improve their skills and quickly. What would be your 3 top tips? Where could somebody start?
Okay. I've got 3. The first one has become a bit of a sound bite, a phrase that I use when I'm facilitating workshops. Make best friends with your voice. And what that means is I encourage people to record their voice. And I know that sounds scary and uncomfortable, but I think as communicators, we should be aware of how our voice sounds and also practice. Even native English speakers should practice their voices. Like, how am I coming across? And with a trusted friend, you can voice note someone else. If there's something that's coming up that's really important, not everything, but if there's an important meeting or an appraisal, performance meeting, something that you really, really want to take care and you want to be mindful that it's coming across in the most positive way, record your voice beforehand and send it to a trusted friend or colleague and get their feedback. And have a dialogue, practice it. So my first one is make best friends with your voice. The second one is I'm a big advocate for nature and going outside and moving, especially when you're having difficult or more challenging conversations. I think back to when I worked in organisation and what a difference it would have made if my line manager had taken me from the office into an outside space and we walked and we talked it all through. So the second one would be, if you have a question or a challenge, or you're having a difficult conversation, I invite you to go outside, change the environment. It will give you a fresh perspective and it will open the mind to being more curious and present. And then the third one is get an accountability buddy. If there's something that you really want to improve on in terms of your communication, have that accountability buddy. Check in with them regularly. Every Monday morning for 30 minutes, I check in with my accountability buddy and I talk through what I wanted to work through the week before and reflect with them just a few simple questions. How did that previous week go? What was positive? What could be improved? What would you like to focus on for the next week? And just having that consistent accountability, that support, can make a massive difference.
Yeah, and it's also, we often come into these things, I think, with the best of intentions. I'm going to change this thing. I'm going to work on this thing. But then, life happens and you've got to put a fire out over here and it gets pushed to the back burner. So to have that, this check-in's coming up, I think that's a great idea because, actually I have to do the work. I can't just keep ticking the can down the road, which is often what happens. I love what you said about the voice piece. We've got an interview with Sally Crosser, who's just written a book called The Voice Print, and she said exactly the same thing. Recording your voice and working on how you come across through your voice, but not in a disparaging way. Like, you have a voice, use it. It's your powerful tool. I absolutely agree. Recording and hearing it back is a humbling experience. So, but it's not just the tone of your voice either. Do you talk too fast?
Yeah.
Do you use a lot of ums and ahs? Are you taking too much time to get to the point? I think those things, reflecting on that is really important. And the walk outside, we've done a whole episode on this, but 100%. Sometimes you just need to, think about the scenario, like you said, you've got to have a challenging conversation and you're sitting in a white, stark room directly across from somebody and there's nowhere else to look. Like, that's actually not a very safe space to have a conversation. Whereas when you're outside, there's other things to look at. You can still talk to each other, but not have that stark, staring kind of scenario. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, her children are now young adults, but she said the only time they would really open up to her was in the car on the drive to and from school because they weren't looking directly at each other. Yeah. It's having to look at the road. So, but it was a finite time too. It was like, okay, it's 20 minutes. So that's when her children would really open up to her. And I almost feel like it's a similar scenario. You've got a set amount of time. You don't have to stare at each other in the face. And I think you're right, getting the movement going, you know this better than I do, is just get the blood pumping, get the oxygen, helps the thought process.
Yeah, it just clears your mind and you're thinking in a different way with clarity of mind. So yeah, I am I am. There was a whole episode, as you said, about this, a huge advocate of it.
Yeah, and look to our listeners that we have a net. Go check out Lisa's work. She runs regular walk and talks in Singapore where they unpick all sorts of things on those talks because, like you say, there's so much research around this. It's really fascinating, actually. All right, so Lisa, we are coming to that part of the episode where we ask our guests 3 questions, and you've already been on the show before, so I'm not going to ask you the same 3 questions that we normally ask. So I've got 3 new ones for you. Ready for those?
Okay. Yeah.
Let's do it. What is an unexpected or left of field way that you've learned a valuable lesson about communication?
Right. So because I've run these walk and talks, I've somehow become a community leader. Somebody called me that the other day and I was like, what? I don't feel like I am that title. But anyway, but what that has meant is I have to now, well, I don't have to, but I've chosen to have this WhatsApp community group. And what I've realized is that people are so engaged with WhatsApp polls. That's where I get, it's crickets the whole rest of the time. But when I whack a poll in there, everyone is like, it's fast as fingers. It's incredible. So what has that taught me? Gamify, engage, like any gamification way. If leaders are out there thinking, God, I can't get through to my team, be more creative, come up with games, and then add in a bit of competitiveness with an incentive, and you're on to a winner. I'm telling you.
I love that. And I also think it's just easy for people, right? It's easy for people to have a say. If it's onerous and they're already busy, well, good luck. But if it's a poll, that's a bit of fun.
It's just a click.
Press the button. Yes. Love that. Great answer. Okay. What is a book or podcast you love and would recommend to our listeners?
Okay, so it's Speaking Human, The Hardest Conversations You'll Have with Yourself by Dr. Donini. And she was a guest on my podcast, actually. She's written this book and it's really great. Great prompt questions. So good for those that like journaling. Lovely journal questions in there. Yeah.
I'm going to have to add that to my pile of books that I'm going to read. There's a few there. Okay. Last question. If you could wave your magic wand and change one thing about communication at work, what would it be?
Take more conversations for a walk outside. And if you can't do that, bring some nature indoors. Because there's so much research that says, just looking at green and bringing nature in as like an analogy or a metaphor really helps open up those creative juices that we all have we think we don't have, but we do have. Nature helps.
I love that.
You know, it's a catalyst for those kind of conversations.
And I also think, just find somewhere else in the office to go. Like if it's, 45 degrees outside and outside is not appealing, find a cafe, find, a nice spot in an air-conditioned somewhere.
Yeah.
If you need to. And you would know that more than anybody being in Singapore.
Yeah.
So, Lisa, if people want to find out more about you and your work, the 6 C's, the walk and talks, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so Lisa Partridge, you will find me there. I have a website, sixcoms.org, and Instagram, Lisa6coms.
We'll get everybody over there. We'll put all those links in the show notes as well. Lisa Partridge, thank you so much for being a guest again on Let's Chat and More Matter.
Absolute joy. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you.